Hey everybody, and welcome to another Konoha Reviews. Today we have a bit of a different kind of review, namely a look at the first ever expansion released for the massively popular online game World of Warcraft. I've been playing World of Warcraft again recently with my girlfriend, and I'm nearing the end of the Warlords of Draenor content and soon to start doing Legion content. I never played those expansions when they came out, and revisiting old content like the Burning Crusade and Lich King content felt really nostalgic since I did play those when they were released back in the day. But that did raise the question if it was still relevant to play Burning Crusade content in 2020, since to some it might feel too old in its mechanics. I will do separate reviews and answer the question if the other expansion content like Lich King or Cataclysm are still worth playing nowadays in other separate videos, so please look forward to those. For today's video, I will be solely focusing on Burning Crusade content and only the level 60 to 70 content in the form of Outland. Once you reach level 58 as a player, you have the option to either head to Outland and experience Burning Crusade content, or head towards Northrend and begin engaging in Wrath of the Lich King. Let's see how playing the Burning Crusade content holds up. Back when the Burning Crusade was first released, it had quite a big impact on the World of Warcraft community. Many new features were introduced, including the change of the level cap from 60 to 70, flying mounts, and new types of quests. Back during the vanilla days of WoW, it was a very notorious game for presenting quests that were very grindy and monotonous. Some might argue that this still holds up today, but I would disagree with that. Though you still get a lot of quests to kill certain enemy types, the amount you need to kill, or the drop rate of the items you need to collect, are a lot more player friendly. By going back into WoW Classic, I was harshly reminded of how brutal the old game was, with one mission having me to look for 5 items dropped by certain enemies, and me having to kill over 30 in order to get them. In that sense, I believe that WoW Classic, and how the game was set up back then, does not respect your time. Ever since Cataclysm, this has changed for the better in my opinion, with often you only having to kill around 8 or so enemies per quest, sometimes even less, or sometimes a bit more. Many of the item drop rates are also quite high, so you usually need to kill the amount of enemies equal to the amount of items you need to collect. Now back in the early days of WoW, it was therefore a relief to find out that a few new types of quests were introduced that offered other type of gameplay or angles that were not your typical grind like we were used to. But nowadays, the Azeroth zones from level 1 to 60 in Cataclysm Azeroth offer a lot more variety overall, and therefore are leaps and bounds above what we get in the Burning Crusade. But let's start with the positive. The lore and story of Burning Crusade has always been great, with the demon invasions from the portal and the Alliance and Horde heading through to stop this. The moment you set foot in Outland, it feels cool and like a step above what we know from vanilla WoW. Even with Cataclysm, that offers great vistas and sights of epic war and battle in several zones, it still felt like a step up, standing on those stone stairs in front of the portal and seeing the Alliance and Horde join forces against the demon onslaught. For me personally, the absolute highlight of Burning Crusade content still lies in the first zone you go to in the form of Hellfire Peninsula, though Shadowmoon Valley is a close second. But the moment you step foot in Hellfire, you get the feeling that you are part of this larger-than-life war against a new type of enemy. The Sky Dome looks beautiful and unlike anything you have seen up until then, and you are pumped to explore and quest in this region. All of the quests in this first zone are also set to make it feel like you are part of this larger conflict. A few quests have you battle the demons themselves or close their portals to keep them from sending in reinforcements. These quests don't have you kill a ton of enemies, and context-wise, they are cool enough to keep you going. The new enemy models look better than the vanilla ones, and the introduction of incredibly large enemies that roam the waste like the huge Fell Reaver are a welcome addition to make it feel all the more epic. The new types of quests that get introduced have you fly in your flying mount and drop bombs from the sky. It's a simple type of quest that maybe does not feel much different than a shooter on rails, but again, it is a welcome variation on kill 12 boars and collect their spleens, etc. Unfortunately, even in this zone, you will still get reintroduced with the grindiness that was WoW in the early days. One particular quest has you kill 20 orcs, which just takes a really long time and becomes boring after killing your 3rd or 4th group. Throughout the zone, you will face multiple bosses and help at several fronts, making this a great start and still worth playing today in my opinion. The pacing for the overall expansion is also pretty solid, with you being able to spend a good 1/3 of your leveling experience from 60 to 70 in this zone, whereas Pandaria is a big pacing issue, with the first zone being so massive and chock full of content that you can easily spend 80% of your leveling experience just there. But the real problem with Burning Crusade content becomes apparent after Hellfire Peninsula, where Hellfire Peninsula introduces a cool war zone with quests that felt like they mattered since you and all of your brothers-in-arms were fighting a larger-than-life enemy. In other zones, the lore and quests that you do feel boring and insignificant. In Zangramarsh, you get more acquainted with the Draenei, and the quests revolve around nearby lakes being polluted and the wildlife being corrupted because of it. The quests are again incredibly grindy, and the overall story just does not feel like it matters to the overall plot. The same can be said for Blade Edge Mountains, a zone that probably is the coolest and most unique looking zone in the Burning Crusade content, with its razor-sharp rocks that even have dead dragons hanging off of them. But again, story-wise, what you are doing really does not seem to matter. You help a few night elves deal with the ogres that like to get drunk, or go to Toshli Station, a nice nod to Star Wars, to help gnomes with some experiments. Again, I am looking at this from the Alliance perspective, so the Horde might have cooler content here, but overall, the quests and story just felt dull. And the grind continues, as I got a quest to kill 30, yes, 30 ogres. And the most insane part was that once I had done that and I completed the quest, I received a new quest to kill another 30 of a different type of enemy. So for 2 quests, I had to kill 60 enemies, which is just ridiculous and an enormous time waster. Other zones like Nagrand are really beautiful and aesthetically might be my favorite, but again have the same problem with the lore and story not feeling like they matter. Nagrand offers similar stories with a conflict involving ogre clans, but also has some hunter activities with you hunting down certain animal types like you did back in Stranglethornville. The only other zone that really feels like it adds something, and makes it seem like a follow-up to Hellfire Peninsula, is Shadowmoon Valley, the home of Illidan. Aesthetically, it feels really cool and climactic, almost like a green Mordor from Lord of the Rings. It again makes you feel like you are part of a larger war with many NPCs raging in conflict with fell demons outside their garrison. Some of the quests here are also a lot more fun, like spying on the enemy general to find out what they are doing, or collecting items to create a weapon to stop the creation of an army of fell demons. When it comes to the dungeons, Burning Crusade, in my opinion, is also quite a letdown. It's for sure that aesthetically the dungeons look a bit more pleasing than some of the vanilla dungeons, that nowadays can look downright ugly. But besides the first set of dungeons in Hellfire that really feel like they have a theme, namely this heavily fortified castle where the red orcs are trying their best to keep a mighty pit lord at bay, some of the other dungeons, like in Zangramarsh, just feel random, though they are the prettiest to look at in Burning Crusade. And then some of the later dungeons have the same color palette over and over again, making them aesthetically really boring and monotonous, and a chore to get through. There's not really a lot of boss encounters or quests that stand out here, and in my opinion, dungeon optimization to where they really felt significant and fun, both gameplay-wise but also lore-wise, was done in Wrath of the Lich King. At least this time they made sure that almost every, if not every, boss encounter has at least one set of spoken dialogue, a feature that was not so normal yet in the old vanilla WoW days. It adds to give some personality to these boss encounters. One fun new feature that was also introduced in this expansion were the different types of PvP setups in each zone. In Hellfire, for example, there are 3 strongholds which can be conquered by the Horde or Alliance by standing near the center of it until it is claimed for your faction. It is comparable to how holding command posts work in games like Battlefield. Whichever side holds all 3 strongholds will get a small buff while they are in that zone, and it adds a nice incentive to go out and clash in PvP battles and get rewards for it. Daily quests and rewards are linked to this as well, and though it is not a matter of tens of players doing this, I can tell you that players will still actively go and conquer these points, so there's definitely some PvP fun to be had. Also, depending on each zone, the type of PvP or things to conquer is very different. Now, balance-wise, this can of course be a huge problem if you are a level 60-something character and suddenly you are facing a 120 player. But that's the whole point with these old expansions and their content, and also why I'm doing these videos. None of the content or gear you get really matters, because you soon will get new and better gear from quests in later expansions. In truth, It's not worth going through the effort of doing dungeons or raids because you get much better equipment anyway by just doing quests. But that is why, in my opinion, it is important to look on how fun it is to go through certain content and see if it's still worth playing or experiencing today. I'm a big fan of the Warcraft lore, so even though I can adhere to the fact that raids in Burning Crusade are useless when it comes to their rewards, they can still be very fun to experience just for the lore alone. Going to Crusade after seeing the Warcraft movie and experiencing this magical place for my own, and even meeting characters from the movie, was a blast. It has some memorable boss fights, including of course the theater show, which has a chance to present a different kind of boss fight based on the theatrical play each time. Then there's the Harry Potter-esque huge chess game that you play against Medivh, which I had completely forgotten about, but was really cool to experience again. And of course the legendary raid to take down Illidan still is cool today, even though overall the approach with Illidan in Burning Crusade was quite disappointing since he was never much at the forefront, something that the creators at Blizzard even admitted themselves and fixed with the Lich King in Wrath. The raids definitely were a step up compared to the vanilla raids, unlike the dungeons. The addition of the Caverns of Time dungeons were cool though, mostly accompanying legendary figures like Thrall in his prison escape. So in the end, is the Burning Crusade still worth playing in 2020? The answer is yes, but it is by far the weakest content out there for WoW nowadays, and I would only recommend the content of Hellfire Peninsula and Shadowmoon Valley. Raid-wise, there's a lot of fun to be had with Karazhan and Illidan being amongst the highlights, but the dungeons are still a bit dull, with maybe a few gems here and there. Whereas originally you could only play Burning Crusade content from level 60 to 70, nowadays you can already head to Northrend when you are 58. And I would probably suggest maybe spending only 5 to 6 levels with Burning Crusade content and then heading over to the much better Northrend area. In the end, the Burning Crusade gets a 6.8. And yes, I will be giving grades to all expansions to come. It's a rough diamond, this expansion, since so much grinding and lack of story is still present in this particular part of the game. It definitely has its highs, but they are not as plentiful as other expansions to come. Join me next time as we move to Cold Northrend and see how Arthas and his Wrath of the Lich King expansion hold up in 2020.